Hey everybody, welcome to another CAF update. This is update 15, so it's kind of a milestone for me to keep doing these and not getting bored with them. And I'm glad you guys aren't getting bored with them either, because they've been a lot of fun for me. Definitely a different way to do my Thursday updates rather than email like I've done for the last 10 years. So I hope you're enjoying them as much as I am. My guest tonight is actually coming to us from Brussels, and so it's 3 a.m. there. So I'm going to get through our intro as quick as possible so I can bring him in. I wanted to do just a quick couple updates for everybody, just to remind them that the LA Comic Art Show is this Sunday. So if you're in the Redondo Beach area, I encourage you to check out the show. Bashar's put a lot of work into bringing this back, and it'll be following all the COVID-19 protocols and whatnot. And definitely, if you can support it, it's a good idea. And the show that I finished the programming on this week and opened to the public yesterday was the ix-online.com show for science fiction, fantasy, imaginative realism artists. It's a great show. I definitely would encourage you to check it out. It's definitely a precursor for what Comic Art Live will probably look like in May. And of course, speaking of Comic Art Live will be, the second show is on November 14th and 15th. So, and setup for booth owners will begin on the 28th, so next Wednesday. Now, I want to get through our updates really quick here. So I wanted to talk first about the comic art dealer sales and preface it a little bit. Sales were really high, $424,000 in sales last week, in part because IX Gallery, the people that I work with for that show, made a big update. They probably were doing some bookkeeping or whatnot. And so $138,000 of that 424 was actually sales from that one gallery. And I know that they're technically not comic art, but they are a lot of book publishing artwork and Magic the Gathering artwork. And everybody knows I'm a big proponent of that genre of art. So I always include it in our overall reports. Even without their sales, it would have been a pretty decent week of almost $300,000 in sales. So IX Gallery was tops in sales with 52 sales and $138,000. Felix was second. With $77,000 in sales. Albert in third with $68,000, and Ramita Man was at $46,000 from 46 distinct sales. So that was the breakdown for the weekend. As far as the artworks that were most realized the most dollars for the week, of course, as we've seen a lot lately, this is a DC Fandom triptych by Jim Lee and Scott Williams, sold by Albert Moy for $40,000. Jim's been tops the last couple of weeks. This was sold by Panel Page Art. It was actually a 8 or 9 complete page story that appeared in Action Comics 600 by Mike Mignola, written by John Byrne. You can see John's signature there, as well as Mike's at the bottom. Next up is a commission sample. This is by Paul Pope, sold by Felix Comic Art, who reps him. This was actually 2 pieces, and I'm only showing one of them. The commission was sold for $15,000. You can see the other piece over on Felix's site. And this is also sold by Felix. It's the Amazing Spider-Man issue 31. It's a complete issue, sold for $15,000 with art by Ryan Otley. And this last piece was also sold by Albert. It's a John Byrne, Klaus Janson, Avengers 183 title page. So don't see too many of them. And interesting combo, that's for sure, as far as inker and penciler. So with that in mind, I'm going to give you the auction house update. Now, auction houses were actually up. Last week it was pretty meager, $176,000 between eBay and Heritage. This week it was up to $212,000. And as usual, Mike Mignola still doing his charity auctions. So this piece realized $4,050, and he's probably well on his way to getting close to $400,000 total for that World Health Kitchen charity that he's been supporting. And selling for the exact same price, $4,050, was the CC Beck Shazam #7 title page, actually. And I really like this. And there was actually another CC Beck piece from the same seller last week. And as well on eBay was this Joe Kubert Golden Age Black Cat page, which even despite the glue stains and whatnot at the top, it's an absolutely beautiful page from Joe. Now, these next 3 are from Heritage. This is a Kurt Swan, Murphy Anderson, Superman 243 page. And I mean, nobody draws Superman like Swan. I love that last panel. And the first panel is pretty darn good too. And this was an 8-page story, Blonde Bomber, part of a Green Hornet number 27. And it was by artist Jill Elgin, sorry. And once again, Frank Joe, somebody's unloading, or a lot of the ballpoint beauties that were part of the Flesk book that Frank kickstarted, I believe, a little over a year ago. And that piece sold for $3,360. So, it was an average week. I'm thinking, I haven't seen anything too fantastic on eBay of late, but there are a lot of auctions that are going to be ending in the near future. So I think we're going to see a lot more sales on the following 2 reports that are coming up. So as far as popular art goes, I know everybody is always eager to see what kind of picks I made for the week. So I'm just going to jump right into it with this really great Frank Frazetta piece in the collection of Patrick Kohanic. He was our guest on Comic Art Live, the 10th episode, I believe. This is Famous Funny's original watercolor from issue 215. This is in Ankur J's collection. It's a Wolverine painting, probably a commission, I believe, and it was done by Simone Bianchi. This next piece was actually done, but it's by Arthur Adams. It was done as an homage with a Captain America kind of, head logo on it. Sorry, stammering through that. But this was actually then used as a Champions #1 cover in the collection of Joshua Tan. And followed up by a Hulk 393 page, also in Joshua's collection by Dale Keown and Mark Farmer. Now, this is in the collection of Michael Wygant. This is by Bernie Wrightson, of course. It's a Swamp Thing #5 page. We got to get Michael to start scanning pieces versus taking them with his phone. His art collection is fantastic. I want to see better images. Next up is this House of Mystery 258 page from the collection of Lee Banaka. It's, of course, done by Steve Ditko. Unmistakable, of course. Next up is a Gabrielle Delato piece. This is in the collection of JN80. It's Wolverine in his X-Force outfit. And this is a Paul Pope Commandy Challenge #4 cover in the collection of Yo Curry. Now this one is, I really like this piece. It's by Jose Garcia Lopez. He, really made DC. George Perez loves his work. Really says a lot about him. This was a Women of DC pinup Jeff Ratzer collection. And this is a Conan page, The Adventure #12, title page, of course, from the collection of Ben Brussel, Raphael Keenan, and John Floyd. And of course, we have the combo of Brian Hitch and Paul Neary on this Authority 3 splash, once again in Ben Brussel's collection. Congratulations, Ben. This is a good one, a collection of Ankur again. This is a Dave Cockrum fanzine artwork from 1969. So it predates anything he did with the X-Men. I mean, real early piece. I don't know where Ankur got it, but stuff like that I always find really enjoyable to see. This is a 2080 page, of course, from the collection of Daniel Ashton. Artist is Mike McMahon. Judge Dredd, of course. Next up is a Catwoman and Batman commission from the collection of Brian Mulcahy. The artist is Chris Samney. And finally, this piece is in the collection of Jeff Singh, and it's a very early Dick Tracy daily from 1932. Artist, of course, is Chester Gould. I wanted to focus just a little bit on the way it was framed. I really like the way it was presented, and I know that Jeff wrote in his description that he wasn't going to do anything to change it. That he liked the way that it was presented, and you don't see things like that. We talked about framing a few weeks ago. There's so many different ways that you can frame your artwork, but I do like it when people put an interesting touch on it. Andrew Allen had all those really unique Micronaut framed pieces that I thought were pretty cool. And usually we don't see stuff like that. And I think it's nice when we get a little bit creative with those types of things. So that was our featured art for the day and for the week. And of course, I always forget to tell everybody in advance that this was for the time period of October 12th through the 18th for all of that data. And all of those links will be on the report page over on CAF, and I'll link that into the into the description of this video once we're all done here, and I can post it live for everyone. So with that in mind, I wanted to, oh, the cockroom was on eBay. Thanks, Jason. I thought I had seen it, and Sean said it. Everybody's telling me it was on eBay. Somehow I missed it. I appreciate it, guys. And all right, so without further ado, the man that probably needs more sleep than any of us, since it's after 3 a.m. now, I wanted to introduce everybody to Frederic Lorge. Hey, Frederic, how are you doing?
I'm really tired. I'm very enthusiastic, Bill.
Well, that's good. That's
glad to be there with you, and hi to all the people who are watching us now.
Well, I'm glad you could make it. I was half tempted to say maybe we should try to like record it and then post it, but I think doing these things live is better. So I do appreciate the fact that you're willing to stay up and do that for us. So, yeah, no, well, so I know that we've emailed a lot even before Comic Art Factory. We had different emails throughout kind of my history with CAF and whatnot, and so like we do with everybody else, I wanted to kind of go over how you got started collecting original art, because clearly your career and everything has gone is very varied since that time. But what got you started?
I think one of the first pages I bought, it was my first connection with comic art. It was in a gallery in Brussels, and I went to visit them, and everything was overpriced for me because everything was over $500, and at the time $500, it was close to my monthly rent. So I went back to check on eBay, and I bought my few pages. I think it was a Spider-Man page, and Spider-Man, it's just Peter Parker taking off his mask, and there was a frame with Uncle Ben and Aunt May. So it was really not a very human Spider-Man page. No, not action, the Spider villains. And I think I bought that for maybe $200, $300 at the time. And I begin with commissions, of course, because when you don't have a lot of money and you don't have the connection and you don't travel to the States, you try to get commission from artists you liked that are still publishing or not. And so I begin having the late issues, problem with commissions, or sometimes the guy who said, I'm going to give you the prelims, but you never see the prelim and you get the finished art. So I stopped doing asking for commissions very, very early in my collecting days. I think I've been nearly 8-9 years without a commission, and my last one was by Jan Bertram, was read by Felix Lou, and I knew Jan's work, but at New York Comic Con he was doodling in a sketchbook, and I saw a few things that I really liked that were different from what of his published work, and I asked if I could just browse through it, and he said yes, and then I said, okay, I would really love to get a commission because that's a side of you I didn't know about. So for me, yes, it's still entertaining, but I was anxious because when I saw the many commissions he did at the time, it was the artist's choice, and you didn't have a clue of what he was gonna do. And there was like 2 in the 6th or 7th that I really like, and I got the one I like the most. But it's like rolling the dice.
Right. Well, he's done that. I know they've done that a lot. Felix with his guys as far as artist choice, and I think in a lot of cases it's just turned out really, really well for the buyer, for the person doing the commission. So I think it was a wise thing for you to do. I think at the end of the day, especially since you like Ian's work so much.
But for me, it's easiest to do so when you're in physical contact with the art, with the artist, and with the artist. It's harder for me to ask for a commission, to buy a page through the internet. It's always different when you have the art in front of you. The decision process is so much faster because so I remember one of the page I like the most in my collection. It's a Jack Kirby 2001 the Marvel Treasury book, and so I saw the page a few feet away, and it was on reverse, so I saw it backwards, and I said I really like it, and I knew I was probably sure I was gonna buy it if the price was right. And it's funny because I just had a general idea and I was seeing the page backwards, so it was sometimes you just get an impulse, and it depending on the price, it can be a great impulse or a very bad decision, but it's something that I really like in the collecting world.
So what year, I'm just kind of curious, because you said you had first seen original comic art in a gallery in Europe.
Yeah.
So what year was that? And for us in America, obviously galleries with comic art are very rare. You know, we don't have them like you have them in Europe.
What I remember, I think it was at least 15 years ago. What I remember was surprised because a lot of the pages, I think there were maybe 2 or 3 portfolios, but most of the pages were just in stack on tables, and no one was watching me because the shop, it was a second-hand bookstore and second-hand DVDs, and you had to climb a few stairs to get at the room where there was a lot of, I mean, hundreds of pages just laying on tables. Mixed artists, mixed genres, so it was, and prices were sometimes written, sometimes not. So, and it was just surprising for me to see pieces of art between 500 and a few K, not even in a portfolio. That surprised me, and said, but everything was too expensive at the time. But there are a lot of galleries right now in Paris. For example, in Paris, you have at least 6 galleries of comic art, and there's 3 in Brussels, including mine. It's mostly European art, and 2 or 3 are having a part of American art in the inventory, but it's mostly European artists, and like 95% books, the artists that publish their work in French, translated in French or originally written in French.
Well, it sounds, you know, I've never been to Paris, so it sounds like I should consider making a trip sometime, and to Brussels too, of course, right?
Yeah. you can do both in the same week.
All right. Well, I've been to Berlin once, and traveled around. I've been to London, but I didn't really get to do a lot of sightseeing in between, unfortunately. So,
for example, there's a comic book museum in London, which is quite small, but it's existing, and they do a lot of exhibition. There's gonna be a comic book museum in Germany. That's, I think I don't know if they just opened or they're gonna open soon. And there's one that's gonna open too in the Netherlands.
oh wow!
And there's one which is there's one that's building itself right now in Brussels. So I think that in the next 10 years, we're gonna see more and more art in the classical museums, and also museum of comic art, I hope, are gonna pop up all over the place. And I think the Lucas Art Museum, the Lucas Museum, is gonna play a huge role in the States regarding the recognition of the comic art and the sequential art in the States for the generic audience.
I agree. Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and fortunate for you that they're doing it, you know, nearby. So that's so people who can go there can go to your place too once it's open. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So before we kind of get into the whole gallery side of things, why don't we talk a little bit more about your collection, because we picked out a few pieces to chat about, and I love them all, and I think they all probably have really good stories. So why don't we start off with the piece by Mike Mignola?
Yeah, Mike Mignola, I think I missed the early days of Hellboy because I browsed through the first Hellboy books when they were translated in French, and maybe because there were a lot of Nazis around, and I just passed on the series. And then I discovered it many years ago, and I didn't understand why I wasn't more interested at the time. And I bought all the BPRD books, I bought all the side projects he did, I bought the World Hellboy Run and Red Hellboy every month until the end recently with the BPRD last story. And this cover, which is funny, is that I read, I think 2 weeks before purchasing it, I was reading all the stories that I think it's, there's a collector that writes, he has many Hellboy pieces from the 92, 93 era. And he writes that he met Mignola during convention, that he had all the covers from the Grey Mouser. He had the classic X-Men. Everything was in one portfolio. And I read all these stories about the meetings and about the work of Mignola at the time. And 2 weeks later, I saw this cover popping up on the internet at, I think at 3 a.m. in the morning, my time. And I think it was just put there like 1 hour ago. And I really love the chiaroscuro. For me, it's a perfect example. I like the ghost figures. I like the 3 parts of the cover, the background. For me, it's one of the strongest Mignola covers I ever saw. And what's really interesting is that every one of these 4 covers, from Far Further and the Grey Mouser, each one has a very specific characteristic that you're gonna see again in Hellboys a few months later. That's very interesting.
That's a beautiful piece without question, and I agree. This is a good transition period from his early work to just before he started doing Hellboy, and and but it's funny that the collector who had all that work didn't have this particular piece, and you seem to have gotten you saw it at the fortuitous time to pick it up too.
Yeah, but I think these covers I would be delighted to find one of the three other ones, or maybe the all three other ones someday. But it's for me, it's really stunning work. It's and when I saw the picture, I was really interested, and when I got it in my hand, and it's gonna go to the framer real soon, and it's breathtaking, really.
When did you pick this piece up?
I think 6 months. I think it was during the quarantine. Yeah, I think it was one of my quarantine pieces.
Oh, okay.
So this year, I think.
Well, there's certainly, everybody was worried about, the art sales during quarantine, and I've been seeing a lot more nice pieces come up on eBay and on other auction houses that I wouldn't have expected, and so I think the quarantine is kind of shaking a few pieces out, like this one, that gave you the opportunity to pick it up.
I think during the quarantine, people had the time to just browse through the collection to see also what was missing from the collection, what they had to sell to get other pieces, and what they were not interested in anymore, or maybe just because they wanted some cash to buy something else, to invest in other goods.
Sure. No, that's a good way to look at it. I mean, right. I mean, if you're stuck at home, we might as well be looking at our comic art. So you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
they could be, like you say, they could looking for a hole, in their collection and sell something. So no, that's fantastic. This next piece is by Harriman, of course, and I know it's probably one of the oldest pieces around by him. And so, what's the story behind this one?
So what's funny is I became an art dealer like 6 years ago, but I mostly consider myself as a gallerist because I'm working with many up and coming artists on consignment. I do a few deals buying and resale, but it's mostly trying to put a spotlight on the artist and just be with them for a few years and see how it goes. And I see myself more and more interested and attracted to historical pieces of work. So I don't have the budget to buy a Winsor McKay page or a Harriman Crazy Cat Sunday page. But when I saw this one, it's from 1903, from a series, I think it's the third or fourth series that Harriman did. It was 22 years at the time. It was for a New York newspaper. And which is really surprising is that it was in nearly perfect condition. It wasn't fold. They were just very, very small tears, but out of the image frame. So I have it restored, but just very smoothly. And I still don't understand because I asked to the previous owner and there was no real story behind it, but how since 1903 it was stored in really great condition. And it's a funny gag. I like that you don't see it really on the scan, but on the sea, the watercolor is still there. So just seeing this blue color that's been there for 107 years. And for me, it's really a museum piece because I bought it before just instantly when I saw that. And after purchasing it, I asked around to a few Harriman collectors and Harriman specialists if they hadn't seen anything prior to 1910, because you see some family upstairs from 1911, 1912, and you can see some illustration from 1910, 1911, but nothing prior to that. So it's possible there are a few stocked or hidden in private, very private collection, but until now, I'm not aware of other pages as early from Harriman. And that's for me it's just amazing to have this kind of piece in your collection.
Oh, without question. I mean, I'm certain this is the oldest Harriman piece on calf. That's for sure. What's the overall size of this piece?
So
What is the size of the artwork?
I think it's kind of a twice up, but maybe a little. Not the width is a little smaller than a twice up, but it's kind of a twice up size.
Okay. Wow. Oh, it's beautiful. Well, it's
And I know it's kind of absurd and it's a little silly, but for me it has like the fact that you can just package this animal and offer it to your captain. For me, just this is really fun to me.
that's great. You're very fortunate to own that.
This is oh yeah, this is, and the story behind that is very this is the most expensive birthday present I ever did to myself until now.
Oh, really?
I was spending the actual day of my birthday alone, and I was cat sitting for a friend, and I just spent like 5-10 minutes on Facebook, and I'm not a big Facebook guy, and I was looking at the original art collectors feed for the Facebook group, and I saw like a thumbnail image, like a little bigger than thumbnail, and I say, oh, it looks good. What's this? And someone just said, oh, it's Liz Wrightson. She just put this page for sale on Comic Art Fans, and the price was a little for me higher than what I would expected for this very, very early Wrightson piece, but I could see in the page everything that would be used in later Wrightson stories. And it did that, I think it was 21 or 22. In some magazine, it's described as the second Wrightson story published, but in fact, it's the first comic story he ever did, Uncle Bill's Barrel. And I found interviews from the time, and he came with the 7-8 page from the story to a convention, and Giordano and Infantino saw his work and asked him to come to work at DC. So that's because of this story that he went to work on House of Secrets. But because this story was for a fanzine, and of course fanzines are always late, so it was published after the first House of Secrets.
Oh, okay, I got it.
But it's when I saw I can see Frazetta, of course, in some panels. I really like the second panel, the third one, and the last panel. I can see Swamp Thing I can imagine Swamp Thing just coming out of the swamp in this one. And his inking on the woods, on the pines, for me, it's just beautiful.
Yeah, without question. And I didn't realize that you had picked this up through CAF.
Yeah, thanks, Bill.
Well, see, CAF is good for something every once in a while, so that's good.
Yeah.
No, that's beautiful.
It's still my most expensive birthday.
Well, when you're house and cat sitting for a friend, I mean, what else are you to do but spend money on art?
Yeah, and of course, if I wasn't cat sitting, if I was just around, I was with friends the next day. But if I had been with friends this day, I'm sure someone else would have picked the page. So it's funny, sometimes you say that the page was waiting for you, the page is for you. I don't really believe in this kind of thing, but that's in this case, it was really just a few coincidences that made me board this page right away.
Oh, that's great. This is a change of pace from the last three images. Yeah,
so that's for me. Paul Jenkins and Mark Buckingham are one of my favorite team of writers and artists on Peter Parker's Spider-Man. And Jenkins, for me, is an amazing writer. It was really very humane and sometimes mundane stories. There are two stories from his run with Buckingham drawing. It's just Peter Parker interacting with Uncle Ben, and it's really, really, really well written. It's funny. He's really made the character of Peter Parker grow, even after all these stories we know about. And in this particular story, and I read it back when I see a page from this story happened to be for sale by Joseph Melchior, who runs the Brit Comics Art website. And I bought the page right away. And then I asked Joe, by any chance, does Mark still has the hand splash of the book? And I think a few weeks later, he said yes. And I bought the page on the spot. This is a very moving story, and I was brought to tears again when I read it, just when I was waiting for the answer on the last page. It's a young black kid, and he has no father, and the mother is an alcoholic, maybe also a drug addict. So he has a tough life, and his only relief is that he has a, I don't know the name, like, you know, the card with the superheroes on it, you know, with the information about the powers and so, you name that.
I'm not sure.
Like a collect, it's like, you know, the card that you collect, you have that in the US for the baseball players, for the
Oh, like
wrestlers.
you mean like trading cards, right?
Yeah. So he has a SpiderMan trading card in his pocket. That's
Got it.
that's the thing he cherished the most. And when he gets in his room and he looks at the SpiderMan card, SpiderMan just pops up through the window and speaks to him and encourages him to keep the faith that things are going to be better. And at the end of the story, which is a tragic one, he came back in his room for the final time, and Spider-Man just gets by to say hello and takes off his mask to shake his hand. And you can see him as a black man. So it's the first depiction of Spider-Man as a black man. And of course, it's not in continuity because it's just in the head of the boy, but it was 8, 9, or 10 years before the appearance of Miles Morales. And for me, it's who grew up as a single kid. The fact that you not idolizing, but you just have some pointers given to you by, for me, Stan Lee, Matt Murdock, Peter Parker. They give me some pointers very soon in life, very early in life, and that this boy, for him, he has no father figure. So for him, of course, Spider-Man is his father figure, and Spider-Man must be black. And it's a really, really moving story. And I encourage all people watching to just try to read the first collected edition of Paul Jenkins and Mark Buckingham on Peter Parker, Spectacular Spider-Man. There's 4 or 5 of them. And there's also great stuff with the Green Goblin. I mean, the characterization by Jenkins is amazing.
Yeah, and I hate to say that I have not read any of them. So
treat yourself to one, really. It's very humane. And it's beautifully written.
Well, I love Buckingham's work. So, I mean, and yeah, I can see why you would feel that way about it. And you were fortunate that Joseph, I mean, I know he reps Buckingham, so that you know he was able to reach out to him for that other piece too.
Yeah, that's really what when you saw, and I show many collectors at that. You have one of your favorite story, you never saw a piece before, and then you saw a page popping up, and you say, "Oh, is the other page that I really like available or not?" And it's like a treasure hunt. Right.
Well, that's you know, I've never been much of a hound when it comes to like digging up artwork. Unfortunately, I've learned a lot though from talking to collectors during these interviews and whatnot, just the different approaches people take, and it's common to go and just ask, right? Sometimes it doesn't hurt to ask if the artist still has something that they haven't sold yet, because a lot of times you'll find out that they do.
But also what's interesting is that, for example, for the Hairy Man, it's an historical value. The Wrightson, it's artistic value. Historic too, but if it was it's like his 12th story, I would have bought it right away also. But this, it's sentimental value and it's character driven. So what's interesting is that I found myself not just attracted by a page that is aesthetic to me or that has meaning, is that also the writing has an impact on some of the pages I bought.
Right. No, I mean, that's I'm learning a lot more about people's collections that way, and some people tend to have, focus one way or the other. They like the artistic merit versus the story. But I think I'm finding more often than not that a lot of people really collect the stories that were important to them. So from when they were younger, or just stories that that meant a lot to them. I mean, every time I talk with Berkey about Spider-Man art, there's like 2 or 3 books that are his touchstone books, that were most important to him as a kid. And yeah, I mean, it comes up a lot. So I think that's great. The sad thing is for me, I mean, I've just always kind of bought art just because I like the art, or I like the overall book, or I was collecting a theme. I can't say that. I mean, I've certainly read a lot of touching stories, but I haven't really had a story that moved me to make me want to buy art from it. And maybe I should find a story like that. But maybe if I read these Buckingham books, right? And
maybe, but it's like it can be a curse too, because I sometimes envy people who just they collect, for example, the Hulk or the Marvel team up, or it's very easy because they can focus.
Hmm.
Me, I'm now, I can be interested by historical value, artistic value, sentimental value, and I also collect both European and American art. So budget-wise, that's a major issue from time to time. And also, I enjoy buying pages from up and coming artists too, not just, and sometimes say, oh, I spent like $900 and $1,200, and then there's a nice Kirby page for 4 or 5K, but I'm a little short because, so it's budgetizing. It's even after 14, 15 years, I'm still driven by impulse from
Hmm.
time to time.
Do you find yourself, selling pieces from your collection, or do you feel like right now do you just buy when you can afford it versus like selling older pieces that don't mean as much now?
I think that every 2 or 3 years, I look at my collection and I put a few pieces on the side that I don't feel as interested as I was before. And also, like I begin collecting Mignola, Wrightson, and Kirby when I can afford it a little bit more. I'm focusing on these three artists mostly, but I bought other pages from other artists recently. So I'm usually forced to sell art to buy new art, like many collectors, because I don't have. I remember a few years ago, a very big collector in Belgium said to me, "You cannot build a great collection if you're selling pieces." And I said, "That's the secret." And then 5 minutes later, I said, "Yes, but it's because he never had to sell because of any health issue or losing a job." And me, I lost my job my main job as a freelancer. I was working as a copywriter, journalist at the time when I was just 6 months or 1 year into collecting. So I had to sell nearly everything and start from scratch 1 or 2 years later. And I see firsthand how it's difficult to sell back most commissions or unpublished work or just conversation pages.
Hmm.
So at some point, there are pieces I say, "Oh, okay, I'm buying them and I don't care about the value." And when you invest a little more, I'm not thinking of resale because there are pieces that they have been in my collection for 8, 9 years now. But it just, I'm not gonna jump through a hoop and pay a crazy amount of money for a piece. I'm just enjoying. So that's the difference. But yeah, and from time to time, because of the gallery and the situation, it happened that I had to sell a piece because, okay, the trimester was not so good, and I wanted to do a show with other artists who gave a cash advance to an artist I was working on. So to balance the budget, I had to sell 1 or 2 pieces.
Right. Right.
But I'm still collecting, so it never stops.
Right. Well, okay, we have one more piece from your collection to
Yeah.
talk about too, and it's Brian Hurt.
Yeah, it's written by Cullen Bunn. It was published by Onai Press. I
Hmm.
think it's 50 or 60 issues. I'm a big Western fan, and that was one of the most modern stories I enjoy the most. So there are 6 guns. Each gun has a specific power. Brought together, they could bring the end of the world. So it's Western with sorcery, magic, mm, not time travel, but funny thing with times, and very, very great big bats and great characterization. And for me, the work of Brian Hurt is close to many European artists. It's like a clear line, and it's funny too. Cullen Bunn for me is a really great writer. So
Hmm.
if you like Western, and if you can just go a little outside of the genre by having some sorcery and some funny stuff happening, I really advise people to read this story. And it's collected in 6 or 7 trades. It's a really great fun story.
That's another one that I have not read. When did it come out?
I think the last episode was at least 5, 6 years ago, at least.
Okay. So it's been out for a while. That was, 5, 6 years ago was a period where I wasn't buying any comics. So there was a period of like 12 years to about 5 years where I wasn't able to buy, and I was in a different financial state. So comics weren't a part of my daily routine then, but
But
I'll check it out.
if you're a Western fan, yes, buy the first trade paperback. You will see. I think for me, it takes the second one for the story to really get going. But it's really it's a really great story, and the end is good because it's not always the time when you have 50 or 60 issues, but for me the end was perfect.
Oh, all right. Well, then I'm gonna put it on my list because I printed everything out that you had sent me, and I know when you told me I had to read the Jenkins story, and I put a little star next to the Western one because I didn't know anything about it. So you may convert me to a reader of those. So I mean, I guess, how did you transition from being a collector to, wanting to also, sell artwork, and then eventually, in a formal fashion through Comic Art Factory?
I never thought of becoming an art dealer, never. So I was a comic book journalist for a dozen of years. So I did hundreds of interviews with European artists and American artists for newspaper, websites, or radio in Belgium. But I wasn't really earning my life with that. It was really a side job, and it allowed me to get a lot of books for free, so
Sure.
to satisfy my hunger for reading. And at some point, I met a few collectors, and I saw that they didn't have the input for many pieces on the American market. So I began advising them because, for me, yes, I know the Daredevil storyline, I know the Spider-Man storyline, I know the artists, the combination between some artists and some inkers, and what for me was just a geek knowledge. I just saw that it could become a side work. I could work as an art advisor for some people. And then I just decided to contact a few artists I liked, but European artists, but they didn't have their art on the market. And with speaking with them, it's because they were not interested in selling their art by the pound or selling a complete book to an art dealer, or because the art dealer wanted to make them do things they were interested in. And so it was people, I read all their books, so I knew their work, and I was approaching them as a fan mostly. And I didn't have, at the time, it was in 2013, so I didn't even have a website at the time. And I decided to call 6, 7 artists that I really read the work for my dozen of the years or 20 years, and they all said yes. And so I began working. For some, give me like 5 pieces for sale, others give me 50 pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And I just began like that, selling the art. I remember the first time I was meeting customers, it was like in a reunion room that I hired by the hour to a place next to my house, and I had my first portfolios, and it grew from there. And every artist I work with until now, it's people that I went for them. I contacted them, and I'm still enjoying going to the bookstore and seeing a book from an artist I don't know and say, oh, I like the work. I'm going to try to contact them, and we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. I know it's I always joke with everybody that it's like, if I wasn't doing CAF, I'd want to be an art dealer, just because I'd want to be, just the idea of being able to, hang out with creators more and interact with them, and and do that as a service. But I mean, I don't think my lifestyle is ever going to be able to change from CAF, but I like that idea. I think the guys that and women who rep comic artists and even writers for signatures and that sort of thing really have like a dream job in a way, because you do get, well, but I didn't realize that. Right, but I mean, I didn't realize that you were doing freelance writing in comic books before that. So I think that's pretty interesting that you were already spending a lot of time in the hobby prior to that, and so that was kind of an easy segue. I mean, you were already used to talking and meeting with creators anyway. So
there's a difference also. I think there's some art dealers that are really in it for the money, and in Europe especially, there are a few colleagues I can talk with, have a conversation of artists, even artists that we don't work with. But there are other art dealers that are really just interested in making it work financially. Mm. And sometimes for them it goes well because they're really competitive and they're able to put the money on the table, and then they just buying art in advance and do big shows. But it's me, I think I'm enjoying the sales mostly because it gives me the money I need to do the next show, and to give most of the money back to the artist. but I also doing videos when I just do interviews, and I use the video to promote the art of the artist I work with and to put a spotlight on them. And for me, this is as interesting as the sale by itself. And it's a reminiscence of my previous year of journalist, and I never had the occasion to work on TV. I worked on radio, on the internet. So doing the interview, doing the editing, and so with my with the cameraman, and so it's really one of the most important parts of my jobs. That's the promotion and the things I do to promote the artists. I just signed my first commercial on the radio with a sponsorship and partnership with a Belgian radio. I think it's the first time a private gallery has a partnership like that for the 3 next shows. So I'm trying really to build the brand and to give as big an audience as I can to the artists I work with.
Well, I did, when I was kind of preparing for the interview, I was doing some Googling, and I did see that, you've done a lot of press releases for not only for the Eisner show that we'll talk about in a few minutes, but even the upcoming show, the Captain Hartlock artwork. I saw a couple different posts for that show as well. So, clearly you're putting in a lot of effort to get the word out.
You never know what's gonna, you know the money you put for your PR guy, you know the time you put as investment, but you never know what the return is gonna be, what the ERI is gonna be.
Right.
And so the next show after the Eisner show that's now on in the gallery, the next show is gonna be with a French artist who was doing a Space Pirate Captain Harlock 3-book series, and we had our first TV. Like it was like just after the big TV news. I don't know say that. You know what? It's at noon or at 7 p.m. when is the information on the national TV. You know the help me on that. You see?
Well, right. Well, in the States, there is always an afternoon local broadcast. So if that's what you're talking about, usually
that was on national TV at 1 p.m. So it was the broad audience you could get, and that was the first time in 2 years and a half that we had that. And we had 2 national newspapers, 2 national radio. So it was a very, very great press day. At the end of the day, we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But we just have to also try to bring new people, not just collectors, but new people, to let them know that they can buy original art at an affordable price. Because most of the time you hear about comic art when it's like, 1 million piece of Frazetta painting is sold, or a Tintin piece is sold, but they never say that you can buy a piece of art for $500 on the news. They never say that.
Right.
And that's one thing that I really try to work on in my communication system.
Sure. So let's see. So obviously you were doing that, but then what was the inspiration for doing a brick and mortar gallery then?
So I was finding the website was up for 4 years, and I was thinking that it was too early to do the brick and mortar gallery, also because of the lease, the rent, the framing, or the cost. And I think it was in 2018, so 2 years and a half ago now. It was just after the new year, and I said, okay, I'm just going to have one last look. I'm probably not going to see anything interesting, but it's going to be too expensive. And it was the 2nd or the 3rd of January, and I found the place, which was previously a gallery, so there was no work needed. I just had to bring my frames and bring my art and buy a table, a desk, and things like that. And it was the space I wanted, the rent I could afford. So I went then, saw the place and signed the lease, but it was not the plan. So I didn't do like a budget, and I didn't think about it for 6 months. It just happened.
Right. Well, that's good. I mean, at least the right place at the right time, and you had to do it. So it's something that you're right. I mean, you can't pass it up.
So I think sometimes just the stars just align. And I wanted an artist I really liked to open the gallery. And there was a French artist every year I was sending him 1 to 3 emails because I wanted to buy a page from him for my personal collection. But every time he declined, and I knew that all the other art dealers were also interested in him. And I called him, and he says, "Oh, why not?" So at this time, he was beginning to be interested in having an art show. But if I hadn't signed the lease for the gallery, I wouldn't have contacted him because I knew he wasn't really interested. So because I rented the brick and mortar gallery, I contacted him again, and he said yes, and it was the first art show at the gallery in April 2018. So from time to time, just making the first move, it can help things move forward a lot.
Right. Well, this might be a good time, just so everybody knows, Frederic being in as a writer, and he puts a lot of production value into his work, and we have a short, not even a minute video clip of his gallery. So I'm going to play that, and then we'll keep talking. So if you didn't have to do a lot to that, you definitely lucked out then. I mean, was that wasn't, the art that was on the walls, was that from recent shows, or was that from one of the earlier ones?
It was from two different shows in 2019. It was one from Stern, which is a Western series, and it's a European series with a guy which is not interested in holding a gun. So it's not even an anti-hero. He's not a hero at all. He's just trying to get by, but he doesn't like the weapon. So and in the Far West, it's hard to stay alive when you don't like to hold a gun. So it's a very funny series. And the other one was with an Italian artist called Daniela Volpari. It's illustration from children books. It's I just found her on the internet someday, and she's working with gouache. She's very delicate, and it's one of the artists that I'm selling her art regularly. So I have people looking for, it can be for gifts or for children's room, or just sometimes half of the people who purchase art don't have children at all. They just enjoyed it, and it's something that I really enjoy is the children books artwork, because sometimes it's very imaginative. Prices can be very affordable, and it can be very, very, very sweet. And from time to time, between two superhero fights, it's nice to just rest your eyes with just animals cuddling each other. It can be interesting.
Oh no, I'm completely with you on that. That's why I like the work that I with the effective art that I do, and the illustration artists that I work with. It's very different from comic art collecting, in a good way. And like you said, it's a nice change of pace. I've bought a lot of cuddly animal pictures. It's hard to see them, but there's a deer and an owl and a frog in a Ronin, a last Ronin kind of costume, and there's like a little, I don't know, a little dwarf on a pigeon or something back there. So I'm all into the the alternative work as well as the comic book artwork. So with regards to these shows, though, I mean, what do they usually last a month? I mean, how do you usually book the gallery?
It really depends. Usually it's between like 3 weeks and 5 weeks. With the pandemic, I restricted the show to like 2 week or 3 weeks time period, because I have very few people now walking by in the gallery. And for example, my French customers, I haven't seen 99% of them since December, because at the time there were big strikes in France, and then COVID happens, and then the quarantines, and then the red zones, and it became a pain to just travel around. And it's not the same. You're not in the same mood now buying art if you have to visit a gallery with a mask because you're not going to take 1 hour, 2 hours. You can't have an opening night. So the quality of the time you're spending in a gallery or in a museum, for me, it's not the same than before.
Right. That's
So,
unfortunate.
yeah, and I hope that, and now in Belgium and France, they're talking about a potential second lockdown. So it's kind of tense right now. And but I'm still I used it was already in the plan to just upgrade my website, and I worked my ass off with the webmaster between February and April to have a brand new website, bilingual too, and I also wanted to have strong shows at the end of the year, because I don't know what's going to happen in 2021. There were artists I wanted to work with. There were release dates that were canceled or postponed, but I still wanted to try to have a real calendar for the end of the year. And it's the 5 artists I'm exhibiting between September and December, and I will never do that again. 5 shows in 4 months. That wasn't a mistake, but I think I overlooked all the small details that I usually because I'm doing nearly everything. I have a PR guy, I have the guy who's filming the interviews, I have a framer, but all the other tasks I'm doing myself, and finishing the packaging of the first exhibition when you're nearly working on the second one and planning the press day for the third one. It's really nice. You learn a lot, but it's really exhausting. And it's really different, because when I talk with many art dealers through the years in the US, and I asked them, why didn't you ever open a gallery? And they said, but I don't need a gallery. Why would I spend my money on the rent and maybe to a salary for a seller when everything is on my website and it sells? So why I don't need a gallery? And I had conversation with Scott Eder, which is the only art dealer in the US who had an art gallery in Brooklyn and now in New Jersey. He's mostly selling indie art. And he came to Europe a lot. He came to Italy, to France. He did many conventions through the years. And we know that it's really hard work to have a gallery. There are some artists, you're not going to work with them if you don't have a brick and mortar gallery. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot of money invested. And sometimes the ERI is not guaranteed at all. So when I was working just on my website until 2018, if a show is not good, if I sell just 3 or 4 pieces, it's okay. I just go take a walk and think about other artists I can work, and I just can rebound very easily. Now, having all these fees, you're working twice or thrice as hard, but the ERI is never guaranteed. So every time I do a show, I'm rolling the dice with a lot of planning and with a lot of hope and with a lot of work, but it's a gamble every time. And because I also work with many up and coming artists, it's more difficult to convince a collector to buy a page from a guy who only made like 1 to 3 books than selling. It's easy for me to sell a SpiderMan page or like a famous character in Europe. Sometimes it's just 2 or 3 phone calls or just putting on my website. But if I have to show people and explain why I think this artist is important and why this story for me will still be interesting in 2 or 3 years, it's a much harder sale than selling a brand like Captain America or the Avengers. It's a different work.
Right. And as the gallery owner, I mean, that's what you have to do. You have to try to convince the buyers about the potential in these artists that they might not be as familiar with, especially when like you said, the characters aren't recognizable, and you almost have to tell the story. We have to sell them. That's and it can be a lot of work.
And the fact is, when you're on your website, and I know some, because I'm also buying from them, some American art dealers, when you ask a question, you get a 5-word answer, and sometimes 2 words. Some are very famous for that. And when you have someone coming into your gallery, sometimes you're going to talk with them for 30 minutes, 1 hour. But sometimes, oh yeah, I'm going to think about it. I'm going to come back with a friend or with my wife. And some come back, some never come back, of course. But if you just have a website, all this, it's just an email or just 2 minutes on a computer. You're never going to spend 30 minutes through your website to try to convince someone that this is a really great piece of art. So
Right.
also the sales that are not happening doesn't hurt your morale on the website. When it's in the gallery, you have to be really resilient to just say, okay, I didn't do a single sale these last 3 days or 4 days of this week, but it's gonna be okay next week. And then you have, I have the case this week I had someone, it's the third time he's coming back, and he looked around a lot and he asked me about specific artists, and then he asked about a specific piece, which is like $600, and he's still hesitating on it. And it's the third time he's coming back in like a month and a half. And he's asked me to show him a lot of other artists. And I enjoy doing it, but then I say at some point, is he gonna decide? Is he gonna come back a fourth time? And you never know, because some people, they don't buy the first time or the second time, and then they come back with a friend, or they come back just by themselves, and they bought for a few K. So you never know who's in your gallery. So
Right.
I try to treat everyone, just even bystanders. And it's really rare that someone just enter the gallery and buy something on the spot or after 30 minutes, because for most of the people, when you say that it's a few $100 for some ink on a piece of paper, they think you're mad.
Well, then there's a lot of us out there that are mad then, unfortunately. But but that's kind of what you knew you were getting into by doing a gallery, though. You knew you were going to have a lot of people who were window shopping and not used to seeing it. So, I mean, it's all an educational kind of tool. But I guarantee you that, I mean, the reason we don't have them in the States, I think, is just, I don't know. I mean, they really, at least there, I think comics and comic art, is viewed much differently than it is here in the States. And I know that a few dealers have tried opening brick and mortar stores, and they've almost, they've all failed within the first 12 months or less, just because, and probably it's that same mentality around here, is that you can buy it online and you don't have to see it in person, and you don't need that person trying to push or sell the art properly. But I think that at the end of the day, I think that it is needed. I wish there were galleries, in the States. I mean, I live in the Midwest, so I'll never see one here. But it'd be great to see them on the East or West Coast, or something like that. But the likelihood is probably sort of slim.
Yeah, but there's also Metropolis in New York. It's just a small part of the building, but they're still doing exhibits, mostly during the New York Comic Con, and they're doing great work. But I think it's a different mentality. There are people in Europe, in France or Belgium, some people are just gonna buy with auction houses. Some people are only gonna buy at specific galleries, which is still surprising for me. For example, if I'm looking for a piece, I don't care if it's Mike Berkey, Albert Moy, or Felix was selling it. If the piece interests me, and if the price is right, I'm gonna purchase it. But in Europe, you have people that are buying only at specific galleries. Like, they're not interested in the world market. They don't compare the prices. They're buying because it comes from this specific art dealer. It's like a stamp of approval, which is sometimes more important than the artist itself. Of course, among these people, there are a lot of investors that they don't know a lot, and they're trying to invest a little. And of course, every artist is the next big thing,
right?
Especially in Paris. And but it's one of my last encounters that I really liked. It was just a random person walking to the gallery. He was coming for a previous show, wasn't interested in what he was seeing. I asked him if he had some, like, 30 minutes at least, what could be his interest, what the artist he liked, if he liked watercolor art, or pen and ink, or pencil art, illustration. And so I need some clues so I can show him, because I have more than 1,000 pieces. And usually people, after 3 to 4 portfolios, it's finished. Too many images. They cannot make a choice. It's too many images in a short amount of time. And I showed him like 4 or 5 artists, and I saw that he was really focusing on one. I happened to add 2 or 3 extra copies of the book of this artist. It was the artist I opened the gallery with like 2 years and a half ago, and I'm still working with him. And he never read anything from the artist. I gave him a free book. So I think I'm gonna come back. I heard that many times, so I never know when it's gonna be true. And he came back a week later and bought a page, and now it's probably gonna be a regular customer. That's for me, it's a small win in terms of sales, but this is very important. This is really creating not a new collector. He had already a few pages, but I showed him an artist, the work of an artist he never heard about, read the book, came back to buy a page. For me, this is very important. This is one of the most important part of my work. And I hope that someday I will have like 10 people like that every month. That would be amazing. But it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. And you have to be really resilient and passionate about your work. And I know that because I don't have like 60, I have in inventory like maybe more than 100 different artists. But the artists I really work with on consignment, it's maybe 15. So it's easy for me to showcase them in a proper way.
Mm-hmm.
Because, okay, you like aviation, I just have one guy who's doing terrific World War II aviation art. If you like illustration, I have 2, 3 illustrators. I have a Lebanese one, an Italian one, completely different genres, and I can show that to people. And it's selling, but it's also for me sharing. It came back to the root of why I became a journalist, because, okay, I love this comic book. I want to say it to as many people as possible. For me, the transmission is really connected to the sale aspect in my personal view of my work.
Mm-hmm. No, well, like with the sale that you made with that gentleman, it was you're becoming the trusted gallery owner, or art rep, and that's like you were saying, like that's what some people, they just always buy from the person they trust to bring that to them, and I'm sure that trust wasn't earned overnight. I mean, I've heard stories of some of the Paris dealers, I guess, and with that same thing being said, that there is a level of trust that's built up between the seller and the buyer and the gallery owner, and that's really all that they're interested in. And so, I mean, if you've only been doing this for 3 years, I mean, I think you've probably got a good start. I mean, you've taken the first step in just setting up the gallery. I mean, COVID hasn't helped at all, but if I mean, for one, I mean, we haven't talked about anybody that you've been working with, but I know that Gilbert Shelton is somebody that yep. And how did you get started with him? I guess, yeah, that to me, that would, I think when I first read that, I'm thinking, how on earth, did you guys come together, to have the gallery show that you did?
And I don't rep any of the artists. It's not as exclusive as it is in the US. Usually to have an exclusive in France or in Belgium, it's because you give like a monthly fee to the artist. Like you become an employee of the gallery, as you can say. So I'm not really repping them. I'm working on their work on consignment, and most of them, they just sell their work through me, but it's not really the rep word that you can have in the States. And Gilbert, I think it's funny because I never smoke weed. So when I came in contact with
what a confession! I'm not saying anything.
So when I read the Three Brothers for the first time many years ago, I didn't connect at all, because their main interest was looking for weed all the time. So right. I wasn't connecting. And a few years ago, I discovered the Fat Freddy's cat strips. And it really made me laugh, because it's like, for me, Shelton is an amazing cartoonist. Is really setting the stage for the time. And it's really, really, really funny. This cat is crazy. And for me, what I really liked about the cat is that, for example, Garfield, I've come to a point when I can't bear to read a Garfield strip, because for me, Garfield is an egomaniac, he's a tyrant, he's a bully, and he's an egotistical, animal. And Fat Freddy's cat, he just wants to be left alone. He just wants to live his life, and he's funny and he's tricky, but and the inking of Shelton is really, really precise, and the dynamic he gives to the cat, like you see the armadillo, it's really amazing.
Oh
This
yeah.
piece is one of my favorites. And the other one is the cover of a French collection when they're just like on the red carpet. How cool is that? And so
Yeah.
I just contacted Gilbert. Gilbert Shelton lives in France for many years now, and I contacted him and I asked him if I could meet him in his workshop in Paris. He said yes, and so I went there for 2 3 days, and he had boxes of art, and I just could dive into them and do the selection that he would of course approve. And we did the show because what's funny is that one of my competitors at Gilbert Shelton Art on Consignment for many years, and they never did a show. And I mean, they have a gallery in Paris, they have a gallery in Brussels. They never even considered him to make a show about him. So I was very happy because I could say that it was the first show from Gilbert Shelton in many years. But so that shows you that sometimes, depending of the gallerist or the art dealer, one artist can be considered very important or just one among many others.
Right.
And Gilbert is a gentleman. He's funny. He came for the art show at the time, so that was I think it was the second show in May 2018. And so to have Gilbert Shelton and the Three Brothers as a second show in my gallery after just 2 months of opening, it was really special to me. And also, what I really like is that I really discovered the Freak Brothers like in 2017. So there are two artists I work with since. They've been doing comic books for 25 years, and it was the first time I had one of their books in my hand. So they're even being an avid reader and even being a collector, there's so many comic book artists in Europe or in America that we can't know everything. Even if we try to hunt everything that would appeal to us, we're gonna miss a few artists.
Right.
So what I really like is that I'm seeing a book from a guy, and I just realized that he's been working for 15 or 20 years. And I called him and said I never did a show, and I was not interested in selling my art, and I can have access to like 20 years of inventory. That's really rare. When it happens, it's amazing.
Right. I mean, Fat Freddy's Cat, I think, has been around since like 1969. So, it was, and I know that he, I live near Cleveland, and I believe he spent time in the Cleveland area kind of around the same time that Crumb, Robert Crumb was around here too. And I know that they both worked in a lot of the same publications in the early 70s.
And they're still friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know, but
they're both living in France for many years now.
Right. I mean, he moved away a long time ago. I think the mid '80s. So he had enough of the States. I think. But no, yeah, I haven't read a lot of the Freak Brothers stuff too. But I mean, imagery wise, that kind of stuff is ingrained in anybody that's my age that grew up in the 70s and seeing his work and seeing Crumb's work. So I knew the work, but I've never really read much about it. I've seen a lot of strips from Fat Freddy's Cat, but no, I bet he was excited to do the show with you.
Yeah, and he's really a sweet guy, and we spent like 2 days in Paris. Then I invited him and his wife for 2 days in Brussels for the show. We had a press day also because it was I think Gilbert did a show in Brussels like 25 years ago, something like that. So there were a few journalists that were really interested because from this time period regarding the indie market in the US, besides him and Crumb, there are not many people that are still around. And also Gilbert is one of the rare where he had characters that are still existing. He's still drawing them 40 years later or 50 years later. That's rare. Usually in the indie market, you had a story, then another. It was one of the rare that had specific characters from the start. And they were used also in many, I think there were many t-shirts that were not like official t-shirts, but they were used. For example, the Gilbert Shelton video interview I did is one of the most shared on Facebook. I have thousands and thousands of views, mostly in the US.
Mm-hmm. Do you have that up on your YouTube channel?
Yeah.
I don't think I saw it. Oh, all right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to make a note to watch it. Sorry about that. See, I was trying to do as much research as I could before we sat down, but I didn't watch that. So I know that I want to get to the Eisner exhibit, but as far as I know you had mentioned Karen Katz, and I don't know anything about their work.
So
but
Karen Katz, as I said, I like to hunt for new things. Karen Katz, I just discovered her work at the last Angoulême convention. So Angoulême is the biggest comic book convention in France. And there's like a big tent when you have, it's called the New World. And there's the place for mostly up and coming publishers or fanzines, small structures. And it was the very end of the day. And I had already seen like dozens and dozens of books. And it was a table with a few Israeli artists. And I saw work and I loved it instantly. And to this day, usually I can write easily to say why I like this art, why I love this art, why it's interesting. But with her, it just, I stare at it and I love it, and I can't really I can't really describe it into words. So that's frustrating. And you have to imagine that the size, it's bigger than twice up.
Oh, wow.
So it's really huge. It's only color pencils. And I remember because when I saw that it's published like in comic book size, and I asked her about the size, the technique, and when she said the size bigger than twice up, I was really amazed by the details. And I said, how can you put as many details? It must take you hours by drawing. And she said, oh, it's easy. I have OCD. So when she begins the drawing, she doesn't know exactly where it's gonna go, but she's not gonna put down a pencil before it seems finished to her.
Right.
And she's published by Fantagraphics. Fantagraphics, they do the collection of short stories. She's been published 3 times in the collection, and it's she's writing. So it's really a comic book. That means there's the illustration and you have the words on the page. But I asked her once and she says, yeah, but it's the words from that day. If I had to write another day, it would be a different text. So if you just want like a beginning, a middle, and an end, it's gonna be hard to read a book. But I mean, artistically, the brands, the fusion of illustration and Art Nouveau, for me, it's breathtaking. And I saw like three years of work, and now I see what she's working on, and I see her evolving yet and yet again. And that's what I like, is that you just see a lot of books, you buy a lot of books, and from time to time, I remember I showed the book to a few people like 2 hours later and said, and I remember one of the biggest American art dealers who was there in Angoulême, and I saw I show him the book and said, I'm really excited. I think it's great. And he asked me, yeah, but do you think it's gonna sell? And I said, I don't know. Right now, I don't care. I'm gonna try to sell it. But right now, I find for me it's fantastic art, and now I want to do my job.
Right.
But I'm not gonna ask first, and it's maybe a mistake, but I'm not gonna ask first, is it gonna sell? What are the potential customers? That's not my brain is not wired that way. I say, oh, I'm excited. There's surely gonna be a pack of people who are gonna be excited too. I don't know how many, so maybe I'm gonna lose some money, maybe I'm gonna earn some, but I want to give it a try. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the most exciting things in my work now.
Well, I mean, I think that's a great approach, right? I mean, you're only working with artists and that you have a passion for, even if it's a bit risky.
It's working with the guts, and but also I'm lucky to have a few customers who like when I bring them something new that they haven't seen before. Of course, some of them may say, no, it's too soon, or I don't know, it's too expensive. But many of them say, okay, it's interesting because it's not the same thing. It's not too classical. It's not the same thing again and again. And when you see a work, you like it or you don't like it. You're not going to have any mixed reviews. It's going to be, it doesn't speak to me, wow, it's beautiful. Okay, I don't know it. Is it expensive? What's the size? Maybe. but there's going to be interest or not interested at all. So
Right.
in terms of artist roster, it's interesting also to me to have artists with a real personality.
And she has a real personality then. Well, I'm gonna now. Do you have some of her work available on your site? I mean, because I can honestly say I haven't. Okay, so
Yeah.
I'll definitely have to check. I mean, I know we started.
And
And by the way,
Christmas is coming.
Christmas. Well, I could see her work being, bought as a gift. That's for, without question. But I'd still, you'd want to see. I'd want to know the story behind it. So, and I didn't say it earlier, but your web guy did or gal did a wonderful job on your website. I have to admit.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's refreshing to see it, and I know that they definitely put a lot of effort into it, and they helped me out when I needed to do the crawl on your site too, so I could import your data. So that was really, and they did it.
Try to work with nice guys and nice girls too.
Exactly, right.
It's more enjoying to work with people like that.
Yeah, well, I haven't been able to get anybody else to work that quickly when I've needed something similar. So usually it takes months or never gets done, and they had what I needed in place within 24 hours. So that was great.
Thank you.
So again, one other thing before we talk about the Eisner exhibit, though, is I think the exhibit after the Eisner exhibit is that the work by Jeremy or
Jerome.
Jerome. Jerome. All right. Well, I had a feeling that might be the way to pronounce it, but I wasn't even going to try the last name. Alquier. Alquier. Okay. Jerome Alquier. All right, I've got it. And it doesn't. I guess maybe it does follow along with your pattern. Where it's like this is someone that or artwork that I wouldn't normally expect to see in an art gallery. And I'll bring up a couple pieces that you had sent me as well.
So it's very easy. So it's a space pirate, Captain Harlock. So of course there's the manga by Matsumoto, but you will probably never see a page available on the market for sale.
Right.
And Jeremy was a fan. He's a 40-year-old artist, and he worked with the French publisher of the French translation of the Space Harlock original manga. And he said he wanted to do a project with in color and with the feel of the original TV series from 1978. So it's a 3-book series that happens between 2 episodes of the original anime. And so he did the script, and he's doing the pencil and the coloring. Everything was approved and supervised by Matsumoto. They had a real partnership during all the work. And every panel is an illustration. So there's no panel pages. Every panel is an illustration, as you can see here. And then he just adds some backgrounds. He adjusts the lights. He zoom in or zoom out. So you have very, very nice shots of Captain Harlock or the Arcadia or the Amazons. And for me, it brings me back to my childhood because I was 3 years old, and my mother confirmed me recently that I watched the anime when I was 3 and 4 years old, because I remember that. And also, it's very hard to do a manga theme exhibition because all the original art stays in Japan. So doing this, it was really a bridge between one of the most famous anime characters and a French artist.
Right. No, well, that makes perfect sense then. And I know that to be the case. I think there was and wasn't there a manga show in London earlier in the year, or maybe it was about a year ago. I mean, it's rare to even get to see any of the original work that's gone into any of these shows.
Yeah. And the thing is that the interesting thing also is that he was really looking for his art to look like the original TV series, the animated TV series. So that means that everyone who saw the show, whichever the country, can have an appeal towards the art. So, for example, we just finished working on the interview today that we did with him, the video interview, and I just worked on the subtitles, asked the daughter of a friend to proofread it in the US. because I want to showcase it for international collectors. Because for me, it's possible that people from Japan, from Hong Kong, from America, from whichever country in Europe can be interested, because it's a Captain Harlock illustration published in a comic book. So then it's exciting because I'm gonna try to create new customers in different markets.
Well, speaking of interest, Jordan is asking, how much is this piece?
I don't have my price list in front of me, but to give you an idea, pieces, the size of the pieces, it goes by like 8.5 by 11, and those are between like 300 and 500 euros. And you have 11 by 17 pieces, who are between like 700 and 1,000 euros. And every piece you have, it's framed not when you're gonna buy the piece and it's gonna be shown on my website when it's gonna be available for sale. You're gonna have the pencil and ink piece like this one, and then you will also receive the printed colorized version. And they're gonna be there. It's a cardboard black frame which is around them, so it sells together, the color version and the pencil and ink version, and it looks really good.
Yeah, actually, I didn't import any of those images, unfortunately, but actually, I could maybe pull one of those up. Let's see.
And people will see the colored version. It really has the feel and the look of the anime. So it's gonna refresh some memories.
Right. So I guess how is the connection made between the both of you? I mean, did he approach you, or did you learn about the project?
Right now, I think there's just one thing from all the artists I work with until now. I went to them, and Jerome, I saw the Captain Harlock book. I saw the second one. No, I saw there was gonna be a third one in November a few months ago with the previews of the European market, and I didn't even see the two first volumes. And I contacted him, and we talked on the phone. And then I invited him. Voila, that's what I'm talking about. So that's really how it's framed. So it can be side by side, up and down, but you will have the color version. Sometimes the size is a little different, but most of the time it's similar, and it looks really good together. And a few of them are already framed at the gallery, and it really looks nice. And you really want it to get the coloring and the feeling of the original animated series, and people are really reacting to that. I think the only artist I didn't contact, it was an artist. He was, I think, in his late 60s or early 70s maybe at the time, and he added me as a friend on Facebook. And I answered him and said, "Oh, I saw you're an artist. I don't know your work, but I suppose you contacted me because you knew I was an art dealer." And he said, "Oh, no, I'm just discovering Facebook and adding many people that Facebook suggests me." So it was just a big coincidence. And it's funny because at the time we got along very well, and it was one of my most successful exhibitions. So, but Jerome, yes, I didn't know. No, Jordan, they're gonna be listed on my sites starting the 5th of November. The exhibition is from the 5th until the 28th of November. It's going to be 3 weeks. And you go on the website, you're going to see the black and white image by itself, and then the full image with the framing and the black and white and the color version. And there's going to be the interview of Jerome, which is going to be posted, I think, early next week on my YouTube channel.
So typically you would release the art on your site when the show launches in your gallery?
Yeah, usually sometimes if there's an opening show, like if it's the Thursday night, I'm going to put the art on the website on the Friday morning, because I'm by myself and I can't handle customers or my guests and check my iPad to see if I sold something, and if I have to put a red dot on the frame, and then there's going to be people who think they bought the piece but it's sold just before in the gallery. So usually it's the day after. But now there's not going to be any opening night soon, especially in Belgium for now. So everything's going to be on the website on the Thursday, 5th of November.
All right. Well, there you go. So Jordan, we're glad you're very interested, and you can get Frederic's email from his website and contact him as soon as the art goes live on the 5th of November.
And also, what's interesting, and I already some interest from many people, is that except cello, except cells, you can buy a Captain Harlock piece. You can ask someone, you can commission a piece, but a published Captain Harlock piece, there's nothing on the market. There's never been anything on the market.
Yeah, no, I can attest to that for sure. I mean, there's just nothing out there at all.
And for me to have like a Will Eisner show, followed by a show which mixes the European clear line and the Japanese character, for me, that's really fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's really fun to do.
So I think we could talk about the Eisner show now.
Yeah.
Since that's what's active and what you have hanging in the gallery, and we've got an actual short clip as well. Once again, because Frederic likes to go all out with his presentations here. So here's a little video. So, I mean, with Eisner's work on this, on A Contract with God, I mean, that was effectively the first graphic novel. I mean, I think it was presented that way. Eisner was looking for a way to transition from the work he did, with the Spirit. I mean, it's this is much later than that, after that, but he had a passion for wanting to tell stories with his art, and it couldn't, and he didn't want to publish it the normal comic book route, and so that was how this whole thing came about. And I forget the name of the okay, and they were the ones who coined the phrase, a graphic novel. And I think that Eisner was clearly well ahead of his time, because he was thinking about doing this long before it was published in '78. So but it took many years for it to get to a point where somebody was willing to take the chance on it. So I'm really curious how the exhibit came about.
The first thing I must say is that even when I see the video and when I see the art framed on the gallery's wall, it's really moving to see so many pieces of Eisner from this specific book, to have them on my hands, to sell them. If I was full of cash, I would buy right away at least half of the exhibition, because it's spectacular art. Historically, it's important, and it's so beautifully drawn. It's amazing. What's really funny about the story is that when Eisner, he really wanted like a book publisher, not a comic book publisher at the time, and even Bayonnet, he had to buy shares of the company for them to publish the book. So it's like the ancestor of the crowdfunding, but by himself.
Right. So, that's true.
Yeah. So that's really important. So he made it happen. The other thing which is really moving, I think everyone remember the first pages of A Contract with God, when Frimhersh comes back to his house under the rain. He's really croaked, and you see he's suffering because he just went to the funeral of his daughter. And these first few pages have marked dozens of artists and thousands of readers. And people learn many, many years after that what brought this story is that Eisner lost his daughter to leukemia when she was just a teenager. So from this tragedy came this story that was his way of dealing with it. And so it's really a very, very personal story, and you can feel it at many times. And it's still very, even people who are not used to read comic books, they can read A Contract with God with ease. And I mean, the work on the bodies, on the face of the characters, it's realistic in terms of what's happening on the page, because there's some misery, there's some anxiety, there's some brutality, but the way he drew the people, it's not so realistic. For me, like EC Comics with different genres, sci-fi, horror, fantasy, it was much more realistic in style that what Eisner is doing here. He's a cartoonist.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I mean, it's a very accessible publication, and it was like you. I've read that many artists cite it as as inspiration, not only for their storytelling, but just the work, the artistry that Eisner put into these pieces.
And I mean, in terms of sequential art, this is a beauty. This is a real beauty. There's so much thing that, for me, it's really a wonderful, beautifully crafted lesson of sequential art.
So, so how did the exhibit come about, where you were able to, display these?
The exhibition came about because of one of the biggest reasons is that Dennis Kitchen, who has been the publisher of Eisner for dozens of years, and who's the person that's curating the Eisner art for the family. We met a few years ago. We happened to get along quite well, and I hope to think, I dare to think that there's a mutual trust, and that we both really love the medium. And Dennis, a few years ago, showed me a few Eisner pieces on the Spirit. It was the first time I saw maybe 20 pages of the Spirit in one day. And I was really, really, really happy to see that. And we talked about other Eisner books. And in fact, I was interested in another Eisner story, because I knew that Scott Eder sold many of the pages from the first story, A Contract with God, in his gallery in Brooklyn 7 years ago. And I didn't know at the time that other pages could be made available. And at some point I asked if there were pages from this book that could be available, and then we began to talk about it, and Dennis decided he was trusting me with that. And for me, it's a huge gift, because I've been an art dealer for 6 years. I just have the art gallery for 2 years and a half, doing an art show with pages from A Contract with God. For me, it's really hard to top that. Really hard.
How has it been received? I mean, given the challenges with COVID and whatnot.
The thing is that I have some customers in Europe and France and Belgium. They were the fact that it was the ink pages were drawn on vellum paper instead of generic paper. Some were hesitating on that. And I also know that for this kind of piece, there are customers, they really want to see the piece in person. Mm-hmm. And with the situation right now, that's complicated. So I already sold a lot of prelims, and it's sold in Europe, in the US, in Asia too, a little. And I sold a few ink pages, but I know I'm gonna sell more as soon as I can travel a little.
Right.
Because in my opinion, the prices are really fair, and I don't think there's maybe gonna be an exhibition in a museum, or like if it's an Eisner show, maybe there's gonna be a few pieces, but there were like 20, 25, 28 ink pages and more than 40 pencil prelims. I don't think it's gonna be able in the future to have as many pieces from Eisner Contract with God at the same place.
Right. What is the size? Are the prelims the same size?
Yeah, it's roughly 8.5 by 11.
Okay. And the inked pieces are they you said they're on vellum? Are they
Yeah, on
both on
vellum, yeah.
vellum? Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
on vellum. And the pencil prelims, they're on very thin white paper.
okay. I mean, I've read a lot. I mean, I've seen a lot of vellum pieces, and I've read that a lot. A lot of the artists prefer the vellum just by the way it takes the ink and whatnot. And so I don't think there's. At the end of the day, I mean, I could see apprehension if you've never bought a work on vellum before, but at the end of the day, I think there is archival. So there's no real issues there with it. It's
No,
just
no, no,
it's
not
just
at all. But
different.
no, but for some people who never saw art on vellum and who see vellum as tracing paper, which is much more fragile than vellum, there can be some hesitation.
Right. Right, but it's not. No, it's not fragile at all.
No.
I mean, it's not as heavy as paper, but no, vellum is definitely much sturdier than tracing paper.
And it looks really good. I mean, the art, everything is framed. All the ink pieces are framed. I didn't frame the pencil prelims because it's very thin paper. I was afraid that even with anti-acid tape, I could take out some pieces of paper when taking out the tape after the exhibition, so they're in the portfolios. But all the ink pages are framed, and it really looks good.
Well, I mean, you're fortunate to have them. That's great. I mean,
yeah.
So you're going to be able to market them even after the show is over.
A little after, but I think in February or March they're gonna come back to the family. It's because it's their property.
Right. Of
so
course.
It's not like I'm gonna have them like for 6 or 1 year to sell them. Also because the exhibition was previously for May, and it was gonna be like 6 or 7 weeks. And because I wanted also to make some promotion with the French media, because I knew that many French collectors would come to Brussels to see the show. But with what's happening right now, I had to work differently.
Right. Well, I mean, I saw on the promo piece that it was just a 2-week show, right? It was the 15th through the 30th. Yeah.
3 weeks.
Oh, okay. 3. Yeah, that's tough. I mean, this can't be an easy time for you, with travel restrictions. And I know I've been reading a lot about Europe and the potential for things getting a little worse in the coming months. So hopefully that doesn't happen.
Yeah, right now in Belgium and France, they're already saying that they're thinking about the second lockdown. So we'll see what happens. But right now the numbers don't look good. It's the second wave. And we already know that in January after the New Year, people are of course going to get together, or the third wave will happen at the time. And they just want to be careful to have not too many people at the hospital so they can cure the older people at the same time that they're curing the COVID patients. So they're trying to get a balance, and it's a brand new situation. So there's going to be good decisions, bad decisions, mistakes. And I think it's a tough time for many people. So I'm consider myself lucky. I worked my ass off since February. I didn't take a week break since, and I was lucky to have many new customers from the US, from Europe, and so it's interesting to see that there's still many people that don't know my gallery or some artists that I represent, that I work with. So sometimes it seems that there's an infinite pool of comic art collectors.
Well, I mean, I'd say that's probably true. I mean, I'm always running into more collectors now since COVID started, and getting a lot more email inquiries from new collectors than I ever did prior to COVID. I mean, most of the contacts that I get are from newer collectors, but it really has been kind of surprising the level of contacts that I've gotten. Just people asking questions, and I get asked all the time, can I trust this dealer? Like, I can't. That's probably like the number 2 question that I get on there is like, I've never bought from this guy. Can I trust him? And so it's a common.
That's funny because there's there's a French website, like the French equivalent of Comic Art Fans,
Hmm.
and I get along with the owner quite well. He says the same thing.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
The biggest question is, can I trust this dealer? Are the prices right? Are the prices fair? It's the biggest question he has every week from many people.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I know. And he and I have emailed a few times because I crawled his site too to pull all 2D art galleries inventory that's up for sale into our stuff too. So yeah, no, it's true. It's really true. I mean, I got an email today, somebody who's having a problem completing a deal, I think it was, and and I couldn't really offer any advice. I mean, I always tell them, once you've consummated a deal, it's between you and the seller. I mean, I've gotten involved a few times, but usually, I'm not party to the transaction. So I say, you're an adult, contact your credit card company or talk to, try to find your way out of it. I mean, I've only ever gotten involved when things are straight up fraudulent. When I've seen something really bad happen, and I feel so bad that because it reflects poorly on CAF and whatnot. But unfortunately, I think there's only been 2 or 3 times where that's ever had where it's happened. But no, it's I would say to you is if there's anything that I can do to promote your shows a little bit more. I know that I know I've run press releases for the last couple of them, but I would say hit me up.
And thank you.
Clearly there's interest. I mean, Jordan, seeing those pieces. I mean, if you want to give me advance peeks or something that we can do to to promote them on CAF leading up to a show, that would probably help generate interest. A month in advance.
I can do, yes. Send you a few preview images that I can do, yes.
Right, and when you do when you edit the interview that you just did with Jerome, I mean, you should get. I'll post that on CAF too.
Great, thanks. And thanks. Also, it's an official thank you, because I think that if me and many other collectors we've been able to grow a collection, it's because of the work you're doing by showcasing thousands of collections. And with these interviews, it's great because you're talking to collectors from different generations, different topics, different kind of collections. So it's always interesting because we see different aspects, we have different inputs, and that adds up to me to that gives more sense also to the collection and to the passion we all have.
Right.
That's important, especially in these times. I think to have some sense of relief and to just talk about some passion and comic books and to have this kind of link, for me, it's a huge relief too.
I agree. I mean, it's been that for me. That's kind of why I started doing these the chats and the interviews and those other the Comic Art Live things I've done with the dealers, just because it has been. I mean, it's taken our minds off of all the the bad things going on and focuses everything on what we all enjoy. Which is the art and the artists and the time we get to spend when we're the caretaker of the art that we own to when we pass it along to somebody else. I mean, these are that's why we're in the hobby. I think by and large we're most people aren't in it just for the investment aspect of original art. It's because we just love the medium and it speaks to us. And I think that I think COVID, as bad as it's been for in a lot of different ways, has been a wonderful opportunity, definitely for CAF and for me to just do more outreach and get to know the hobby. And I mean, I've wanted to have you on earlier just because I felt like that I haven't really talked to any European collectors, and the biggest problem being is I think it's is it 5 a.m. there now? That's why we haven't done these before. So thank you for staying up so late.
I'm gonna take a nap.
Yeah, I think so. You're gonna need a little bit more than that, but I completely appreciate the fact that you took the time out tonight, and
thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, my pleasure, and thanks to everybody who's tuned in this evening as well. I appreciate it. I know that there were other things on TV tonight that you could have watched, and instead you spent your time with us, and I sincerely appreciate that. So, Frederic, again, if there's anything I can ever do to help, just keep hitting me up, and I'll be there to help out. And
thanks, man.
all right,
thanks for having me. If anyone has a question, just shoot me an email on either on European or American comic art. I would be very happy to answer to everyone.
All right. All right, great. And I know Jordan's going to be in touch with you.
I know.
So, all right, everybody, thanks again. And, let's see, on Tuesday, I have another chat, and it's going to be with the Comic Art Live guys. And it's with a gentleman named Ben Saunders. He curated the Marvel Superhero Experience exhibit that's currently at the Henry Ford Museum in Michigan. And he's also a rather large art collector as well. So because there's a lot of original art represented in that, and through his contacts and whatnot, he was able to put together this fantastic show. So we're going to have a nice chat with him on Tuesday. And then after that, I'm not quite sure what my schedule is. But again, Frederic, thank you so much. And
You're welcome.
everybody,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
have a great evening.
Bye.